December 29th, 1998. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have here before me my paternal grandmother, Philomena, and her little sister by 12 years, my great aunt, Maria Gloria. I'm so lucky to have them here today. And we're going to talk about stories from the old days. Right?
Right.
Y'all
right.
ready?
We're ready.
Okay. I'm glad y'all are both here. This was
We're glad to be here, too.
by accident, really, because I didn't know
right.
you were going to be here.
That's right. I came over to bring Christmas
And
presents.
you had mentioned something about that.
Yeah, I said we should get Kinsey too, and then I just never organized it. So anyway, let's talk about. Tell me about. How did they come to America? What was that story? How did that all happen?
I
My
don't know
maternal
about that.
grandparents came to America together, and
That was your mother's parents. They
my
came
mother's
together.
parents.
And what was their name? They were the Grappaninas?
Yeah.
Maria Salvato and Rosario,
And Rosario
Graffanini.
Graffanini.
And they were married when they came over?
Yes.
How old were they when they came over?
Oh, I don't know. I know that my mother wasn't born, and neither was Tina, my mother's sister.
And they moved to South Claiborne?
When they first came over, I don't know where they lived. I really don't. I wasn't born then.
But when do you remember them?
I remember them on South Claiborne. They owned a house on South Claiborne, right, but the 100 block of South Claiborne,
Mm-hmm.
right off of Tulane Avenue. And I'm trying to think of where my mother was born. I don't know where she was born.
Mm-hmm. What
Hmm.
year was she born? Do you know that?
Mm-mm.
18. Wait, let's see. She died in 1955,
Mm-hmm.
and she was 59 years old. So you figured probably about 1896.
And then your father, was he born here?
No, yes.
Yes.
So how was he born here and then went back to Italy and
Because
then came back
my
here?
paternal grandparents left Italy with two daughters, my Aunt Annie and my Aunt Nina. And when they came to America, my Uncle Joseph, who we called Uncle Pepino, that I had never met, was born here, and my father was born here. And then yellow fever broke out, and he got very alarmed, and he took his four children back to Italy.
And when you say Italy, where do you mean?
Contessa and
In
Turin,
Sicily.
in Sicily.
And Kinsey, you've been there.
Twice.
Twice you've been there.
Love it. I want to go back tomorrow.
We should go back tomorrow.
And they proceeded to have 12 more children.
They had them back in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
So the two that they came over here with were their first two children,
Mm-hmm.
and then they had
Aunt
two
Annie,
here,
who married Lala, and Aunt Nina, who married Philip Quincy.
and then they had two here. That makes
Two
four.
boys.
Mm-hmm.
And then they went back and had 12.
12 more.
And
my
they
father
stayed
was
there.
number 4. He was the second son.
Uh-huh. Now, so how old was he when they went back there? He was an infant, right?
Very young.
Right, 2 years old.
2 years old. So then, tell about the circumstances under which he came back to America.
He just wanted to come back.
Now, wasn't there something else?
Yes, he was
Oh,
studying.
yeah,
He
yeah,
was in
yeah.
the
I forgot
priest,
about
studying
that.
to be a priest.
He had gone, actually, in Contessa.
You forget the scandalous part. That's the good
Well,
part.
in Contessa,
The
they,
scandal.
if you had many, many sons, you had to give one to God. So because he was obedient and he was intelligent, this was his story, his mother decided that he should be the one.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't his vocation. She sent him to become a priest.
Are you sure?
I'm positive. president. This came from him.
He never did want to be a priest.
Mm-mm. And he finally, about just about 6 months before his ordination, one of his professors, Professor Lapiano was his name, he spoke with him because he had been getting sort of nightmares during the night.
Mhm.
And this is how come he spoke to this priest, professor. And he told him actually it was not his vocation. He didn't want to. And he said in Italian, I forgot how to say it, flee now before it is too late. So he flew.
So he flew.
He flew.
And so when he left the priesthood, was his mother, or when he left the seminary?
When he left the
They
seminary,
were
they were
very
absolutely disgraced.
They were
They sent him out
destroyed.
into the fields to work.
And his hands were so smooth.
And the boys and everybody would make fun of him, saying, "You're doing labor now. You didn't want to be a priest. You're doing labor." So he decided, well,
How did he get so smart? He's an intelligent man, very
my
well
grandfather, they
read.
tell
His
me,
father was
Shalacy
brilliant,
very
too.
smart.
Very
really?
smart. He was the mayor
His
of
father.
Contessa.
Oh, he was?
And they said he was a very, very brilliant man.
Did they go to university? Or?
No.
Oh, no, they had no education.
In fact,
Daddy was the
in
only one with
Italy-
an education.
And where did he
Oh,
get it? But
Well,
in the
because
seminary?
of the priesthood.
Mm-hmm.
you know, not that Daddy went in just for an education, but in Italy,
Mhm.
many young men enter the seminary so they get an education.
Mm-hmm.
And they
That's
study,
Mm-hmm.
and they may go almost to the end, and then they leave. This
Mhm.
happens quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. And where was the seminary that he was in?
Monreale, in Sicily.
Is that near Contessa?
Palermo.
It's in Palermo.
About 60 miles from Contessa.
Mhm.
And I went all through Monreale. That was such an experience. It's beautiful. It's just beautiful. Every place I walked.
Could you
I felt-
imagine him being there?
I felt like I was walking with him. I was walking right in his shoes. I kept thinking, Daddy, I wish you were here to explain it all to me. It was beautiful.
Mm. So, did the disgrace that was brought upon his house by leaving the priesthood have anything to do with his coming back to New Orleans?
Yes.
Didn't he go into the army?
Yeah, he did. That's true. I
He
forgot
went into
about
the
that.
army. That was another thing. They made him go into the army.
This
so.
was after he left the priesthood?
Yeah.
Finished? Yes, ma'am.
Oh, we're going to
Uh,
have to have a
Susan.
pause. Hold on a second. Let me pause this.
She got to tell them stories. Huh?
Yeah. Take it off. Pause.
She gonna look back years
Okay, we're back.
Mhm.
And, I'm going to leave that off. We were talking about he went into the army, your father?
Yeah, he went into the Italian army. And when he came out, he, from what I remember, from what I was told, he came to America with Aunt Jocko.
And then you don't know what year he came over here, huh?
He came over here just about 2 years before he married my mother,
So he was probably 25
about 25 years old.
years old.
And do you know what year he was born? How much older than your mother was he?
11 years
Okay.
older than her.
So was
So
thinking
11.
like 1885, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so then he came over here. Now, what year did we think it was? Like around 19... How long was it? How long were they married before Uncle John was born?
About 2 years, year and a half, 2 years.
And
They were
Yeah,
married in
John-
October.
John was born in 1914, and they must have been married in about 1912.
okay, so he must have come here in about 1910 then.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
they were married in 1912 because the cards that he was sending to her, beautiful cards, right before they married, there's 1912 on them.
Mhm.
Are those where do you have those cards? Do you have those cards?
Yeah, I've never mounted them on. I'm supposed to put them on velvet in a frame, but I haven't done that yet. I have them together.
Uh-huh. So, when did he? All right, so he came over here in around 1910, and where did he move and what did he do?
He moved in with his uncle, his mother's father, mother's brother, who was also my mother's father, which made them first cousins.
And they were both from Contessa, right?
Yeah.
No, not mother.
Where was she from?
Mother was born here in New Orleans.
Well, where was her family from?
Contessa.
They were from Contessa.
So the Graffaninos knew the Shalacies in Contessa.
Oh, yeah.
So they said, when you get to America, look up the Graffaninos. They're
Not
your
look
first
up the
cousins.
That was
Yes.
his uncle.
His uncle, it was his mother's brother. She was a Graffanini married to a Shalacy. Grandma Shalacy, my paternal grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
who was Philomene Graffanini.
When our daddy
Shalacy.
came to this country, he came to his uncle's home.
Yeah.
And that was his mother's brother he was coming to.
Oh, his mother's
His
brother.
mother's brother,
I
who
see,
was
okay.
Rosario Shalacy, who happened to be my mother's father.
Rosario
I
Graffanini.
meant to say Rosario Graffanini. I'm going to mix up. Rosario
I was gonna say.
Graffanini was my daddy's uncle.
Was
And that
it-
happened afterwards, became his father-in-law.
Okay, got it, okay. Because he
And
married his first cousin.
they were first cousins. Her daddy was Rosario Graffanini. His
Uh-huh.
mother was Filomena Graffanini
Mm-hmm.
Shalacy. Okay.
Okay. So, I'm sorry,
Now
I'm
everybody
struggling with
knows
the
why
light
we're
here.
so very, very strange.
The mutations
That's why we're
were...
confused.
The mutations came out. Do you want to have lipstick for posterity?
Yeah.
Here, here's some lipstick.
I have some too.
Look nice for the people. There you go. So what else? Let's talk while this thing is running. After he came to this country and his,
So did he go to live
I don't
with?
think he lived with him, no.
He just looked him up.
My grandfather was kind of overseeing everybody who came over.
I see.
He
Who
was
didn't
like,
live with who?
did Daddy live with Papa?
Positively, where else?
I didn't know that. Didn't his sisters come over?
He had a Jacko, but she also lived with Papa.
They all lived in the same house.
Sure.
Wow,
Sure.
very interesting.
And what house was that? Was that South Claiborne?
No. I don't know where they lived.
Well, when did they move
Palmyra?
No.
Was there Palmyra?
Palmyra. Papa owned a house on Palmyra, and after Tina married Uncle Nick, then they rented from Papa in Palmyra. And then he also owned a house on Cleveland. And my mother and father, his other daughter, his first daughter, lived on Cleveland. Now, I remember Cleveland, too. I must have been no more than about 4 years old.
Where's Cleveland Street? Is that in the 9th Ward?
No, it's Third Ward.
Where is that? Treme?
No. Around, right off of Canal Street, where St. Joseph's Church is,
Okay.
up in that area.
Oh, okay. So pick it up where you can remember, like, where they moved to with your father and your mother and all that. 'Cause I know I've heard you talk about that before.
Before I was born.
Like, how did they get to North Claiborne in the house where you grew
Oh,
up?
well, we lived on Cleveland, and Daddy had an opportunity to buy the house at 1240 North Claiborne from Mr. Lupo and Mr. DeMaio, his friends. They were going back to Italy,
Mm-hmm.
and they offered, they told him they had this house,
Mm-hmm.
and Daddy was very interested in it, and he decided he was going to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And when Papa and Mama, who were my maternal grandparents, learned that they were going to move,
Uh-huh.
they were outdone. Said, "You're going to move away from us?" And he says, well, I'm not going to be that far away. They were the first 100 block of South Claiborne. This was the 1200 block of North Claiborne.
Mhm.
And he says, well, Papa, do you want to come live with us? And he says, yes. And he says, well, come live with us. He says, well, what about your brother and my other daughter? Well, if they want to come, they can live too. So they all moved.
But that was the time of the extended
Everybody lived
family.
together.
Everybody lived
you know,
together.
Either you lived in the next block.
And then Tina and Uncle Nick, I think, lived in the back.
Yeah, they had servants' quarters in the back of the house.
Mhm.
It was a nice big, like
a big house
kitchen.
with only 2
And
bedrooms.
upstairs, 2 bedrooms and a bath.
Mhm.
Upstairs, they didn't have
I'm talking about the back.
the back.
The
Oh,
back
They
where
had no
Tina and Uncle
upstairs.
Nick
There was
lived.
two bedrooms, 1 bathroom, an enormous kitchen, double parlor, beautiful, and a living room. And Uncle Nick, Tina, Mama, Papa, me, and Uncle John, and my parents, and Uncle Buttsy, all lived in that one house.
Oh my.
Yeah,
Now,
but Tina and
They
Uncle Nick were
had
in the
servants'
back.
quarters in the back, and they
The
had
2 bedrooms and a bath
and
and
a
a
bath.
kitchen in the back.
And that's where Tina, and Uncle Nick, and Uncle Buttsy lived.
So what year was it after you were born that this happened? Were you born in the house on South Claiborne?
Yeah, I was born on South Clay.
Mhm. Well, you were born in the hospital, right?
No.
You were born in the house.
Yeah, people weren't born in hospitals then.
And how old were you when they moved to North Claiborne?
I was about 4 or 5 years
So
old.
what did Papa do for a living?
Papa was a
He
butcher.
was a butcher.
And then that's how Bootsy came to have,
Yeah, butcher.
and Uncle Nick, I
Uncle
guess.
Nick, yeah.
Yeah, they were all butchers.
They were all butchers. Is
The
that
grocery
Kansas
business.
City meat market?
Well, he had Kansas City meat markets, yeah.
Mhm.
I think there were 2 or 3 of them at the time. But
That,
he-
and Papa started that?
Oh yeah, but he first was a butcher in the Claiborne Market, which was right off of Tulane Avenue, between Tulane Avenue and Canal Street, I think, or something like that, up in
Mhm.
that area.
Mhm.
And then he opened up the Kansas City meat markets.
Now, tell what you remember about Papa. He was quite a character, huh?
Papa never talked
Did
to
you
me.
know
All he did
Papa?
was whistle.
We have different memories of our grandfather.
By the time she came
I
along, he
adored
had
him.
mellowed.
He just treated me like I was something very special. He never passed me that he didn't hug me, kiss me, and
Mhm.
pat me on my fanny and call me fundi de cita. which
And he
meant
never,
silk
ever
fundy.
did anything but whistle for me.
Kissed me and hugged me, and I adored him. And I feel so bad because you just really didn't like him, huh?
But he wasn't an affectionate man. He would just sit down there and smoke his cigar. He wore spats. I never ever saw that man without a coat and tie.
Yeah, but you weren't too affectionate yourself, though.
Oh, I was affectionate with my
Well, sister,
dad.
you didn't kiss Mother. You never did kiss Mother a lot, and you know that. You
Well, I
said it to
didn't
me.
kiss
You
Mother
didn't
a
do
lot.
it. And
I-
I never let Mother pass without kissing her.
Well, I was very affectionate with Daddy.
Maybe he had bad vibes with you. You maybe didn't like him, and so you didn't hug him. You know, really. You were your daddy's girl, that's all. That's
You
true.
were kind of sickly too, weren't you? No, you weren't skinny.
I
Yeah,
was
she was
skinny, but I
skinny.
wasn't sickly. Just a skinny
For
kid.
that matter, I was skinny too.
And was Bootsy always heavy,
Oh,
as
even when
I
he was a
remember.
little kid?
he was a fat little kid.
Cute.
Although I have a picture of
So
him
wait,
on the
we gotta
refrigerator.
go through the ages here. There was 2 years between you and John, right?
About 2
John
years,
was born in
2 years.
1914.
2.5, 2 years, 8 months.
And then you were born in 1917.
1917.
And then who was next? Kinsey?
Did-
Dutz,
But Dutz was next.
1925.
So a long
That
time.
I was born in 1928. And by the time I came, my daddy, I was born in September of 28.
Mhm.
My dad had his first stroke in December of 28. I was 3 months old.
Oh, wow.
And that's my earliest recollection. Always sitting in his lap in the wheelchair.
Mhm.
I didn't know anything was wrong with him. I just thought everybody went every place in a wheelchair. I was always in his lap.
Mhm.
And they would take him from the house to the grocery store, from the grocery store to home. And that was my earliest recollection.
And then when was Blitzy born?
But she was born before me.
1919.
Oh, okay. He was older than
He
you.
was 9 years older than me.
Well, before we get up that far, we need to finish talking about Papa.
About what?
Papa. And how stern he was with you.
Oh, he was very stern.
He used to
He
say,
had hanging on a hook
Zorte.
3 sticks. John, sister, and Buttsy. And if we did anything he didn't like, he'd say, go get your stick. How could you hug a man like that?
He didn't use it, sis.
I don't care.
Oh,
And you go get your
He
stick.
had you scared to
I
death.
had a stick
And
too.
then he said, what makes you good? And we had to say, the stick.
And then what would he do?
And then he'd say, smell the stick. We smelled the stick, and then we had to go put the damn stick back up. You want me to hug a man like that?
Well, he never
I
hit
had
you
a
with the
stick too,
stick.
sis.
I don't
But
believe
just
it.
had a stick. Oh, don't wait, now.
Y'all had a stick?
But Dutz and I had our sticks, but we knew better. We were sharp enough to know he's not touching us.
She
All
wouldn't
it
even know
was for the stick.
Johanna versus, who was the other one?
Amelia?
Amelia? What was that?
Johanna was a housekeeper for my mama.
She was there when I was born.
And Amelia was with
Johanna was like my heart. I mean, she was always there. She was like another mother. And she always came with her 2 little black girls, Leona and Dolores. And those were my black friends. I played with them every day. In fact, one day I put Dolores in the bathtub and I was scrubbing her.
Trying to get the black off?
And they said, I kept saying, your mama don't wash you enough. Your mama don't wash you enough. But we played. And then she had a son, too. Dolores,
He came later.
Leona, and
Tyrone.
no, there was a son before them.
Tyrone.
Who?
Oh, yeah, they did have a
Wait,
son.
there was a
before
son before the 2 girls, and then many years later she had a baby. Many years later, and that baby came in her arms. We put that baby in a bassinet in the kitchen.
So wait, I want to hear the story about how he would say, Vizorte.
Huh?
Vizorte.
Bazotti's little girl.
And when would he
Vizorte.
say that? Could you watch up?
Whenever he had anything to say to me.
When he wanted-
Bazotti have to. Oh, I know when he said
girl.
it.
I
come
know,
here.
yeah, that's when he
I had a
said
boyfriend,
it.
and Henry was his name, and he would pass in front of the iron fence, and I would go down the stairs from the porch and talk to him. And Papa would come out with his pipe, and he would say, Bazotti! I died of humiliation. Ertu, which meant, come inside. I'd say, I have to go. But I tell you one thing, life was beautiful when my daddy was alive because I can remember, what was that?
It's a telephone.
This isn't going
It's
to work.
not plugged in. I'll go get it. Just keep
Why?
talking. Keep talking.
Why it's not going to work?
Because she unplugged it.
Little light.
Oh.
Hello? No, secret. Hi, how you doing?
So-
Good.
I'll call him back.
Yeah, I'm feeling much better. What are you doing?
Did you
Yeah,
turn
she
it
just
off?
left. She did good. Yeah. Yeah.
She
Yeah.
must have turned that off. Huh? This thing.
Yeah, that's right.
I started college at Ursuline, transferred to Loyola the next year. And there was an Ursuline dance. And here I am, about 17 years old. And I wanted to go to the dance, and he started to exercise his will. You know, I wasn't going to the dance with any boy. He wasn't even my father, it was my grandfather. And my father said, oh, yes, she is. She's going to the dance. If she wants to go to a dance, she's going to a dance. I'm in college. So I go to the dance, and I come home, and I have a lot of fever. I got the flu.
Mm.
And I really had a bad case of the flu. I was sitting in my mother's bed because whenever you got sick and the doctor came, they put all the beautiful white sheets on and you sat and you laid in mother's bed.
The
you
lacy
know?
sheets, huh?
Mm?
Those sheets with a lot of lace.
Yeah. Anyhow, I had a lot of fever and he was worried. And he'd walk up and down the hall with his pipe. And he'd stop at mother's door and look at me and say, "Go to the dance." And then he'd walk back again. I'll never forget that. Walk back again and stop. "Go to the dance." He said it so many times till my mom was in the kitchen, my grandma. And I said, "Mama, Mama." And she came, "What's the matter?" I said, "Make him go away." So she started to scream at him to let me alone.
Now, she was a little bitty thing, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was not even 5 feet tall.
She was like Jenny, huh?
Mm.
And she had long, thick hair.
Oh yeah, she had was hair in a bun, you know.
And didn't you used to brush it for her?
Oh, I used to love to brush.
I used to brush it too.
We all brush.
In fact, she used to give me a nickel just to brush her hair.
Didn't she say she would give you a nickel if you found a
If you found a
cootie?
booger.
Yeah.
If a
She
booger?
loved for you to just brush her hair. She loved it. In fact, I was brushing her hair right before she had her stroke.
Oh, really?
I was brushing her hair, then she got up and she was going to do some things I forgot in the next room, and suddenly she stopped. And she turned and she walked back and she sat in the chair. And she said, "Call your mother, I'm getting sick."
Oh, so she knew immediately, huh?
She knew she was having a stroke. She said, "Call your
And
mother."
did she just die from that
Uh-uh,
stroke?
no. Oh, yes, she did, but not that minute.
She
Mhm.
died
They got
about
her to
3
the
days
hospital.
later.
Mm-hmm.
Bootsy was home with me that night.
Mm-hmm. So
Oh.
he was kind of a ladies' man too, wasn't he, Papa?
Yeah.
I think we understand.
You
I didn't know that.
you
I
didn't-
just learned it. My sister told me all about his faults.
Escapades.
Well,
But he
did
was
you ever
always
see any of the
dressed.
women?
Huh?
You ever saw any of the women that he ran around with?
I saw one of them. She was the daughter of the man who ran the Italian hall, and she was a big fat slob.
Really?
I mean, that's what I was told. It was she. I don't know.
Oh, really? Who told you?
I don't remember.
Now,
I
when?
know I do remember my mother.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because my mother had a big argument with him about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't actually told to me. I knew what they were saying, you know.
Mm-hmm. So she was arguing with him, and you overheard it.
Right. She was
But
screaming at
Susan,
him.
in those
defending her
days,
mother.
everybody had a girlfriend. That wasn't,
Well, that's not
You
too
know,
different from today.
it's no different than today, but in those days,
It was almost
everybody,
You had to
they
have
had
a
a wife and
girlfriend.
you had a woman.
concubine.
And usually, many of them had children with those women.
But those women never got married? They just had children out
Some
of
of them were
wedlock?
married to their husbands and fooling around with somebody else. I guess it
Really?
just depended who they were, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But there's nothing unique about having a girlfriend. Not to my knowledge. I mean, in those days, way back, it was almost understood. Your wife had another woman, and you were a good, dutiful wife, and you cooked the meal. And when he came home, you served him, and he was king. And today,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of women serve their husbands when they come home and know that he just left his girlfriend's bed.
Mm-hmm.
This is nothing new, you know? What's new?
So what's
Today it's
new?
all over TV now.
Right, exactly. Just don't do it in the White House.
Oh, it's been done in the White House a lot.
I'm sure.
Now they're making a big to-do over
Right.
it.
Now wait, when did the bordello open next door?
Gosh, I don't know. Let's see. The people that lived there when we first bought the house, their name was Badovich.
They were itches.
Yes. And one of the Badoviches married a Skiro. And then they sold that home to someone by the name of,
The main name was McKay.
no, McKay was later.
Well, wasn't she the one that had the
Yeah, but
house
wait a
of
minute,
ill
I'm trying to
repute?
think of when, yeah, but there was,
This was
after the
directly next
Bonaviches
door?
owned it,
Right next door, we had Miss McKay, and
one,
on the
two,
other
three,
side
four, North Clavin.
we had a funeral parlor.
So tell me about the House of Ill Repute. How
That
did,
was-
like, when did you realize it was a House of Ill Repute?
I never did realize it.
You knew though, huh?
Oh, yeah. I used to see.
Was it before Kinsey was born, or?
Oh, no, yeah, before she was born.
I played there all the time.
With the lady?
I was always in the backyard. I didn't know what was going on. All I know is that she was the sweetest, nicest lady.
Miss
I
McKay?
love Miss McKay.
Well, they were very sweet people, two sisters.
In fact, when Daddy died, you know more about this, they sent over.
When Daddy died,
all
we
this
came home
food.
from the funeral. They had their maid there, and they had our dining room table set. I don't think we locked doors in those days. With all their silver and their china, and had a big meal cooked for us.
These are the two sisters?
Mhm.
Now, did they have other women that worked for them that lived there
Yes,
too? How
yes.
many?
Oh, I don't know. I was too young to know that.
I mean, no. 2,
I
5,
have no
10, no
idea.
idea.
I have no idea.
But you would see the men
I can
coming and
remember
going?
once Tina, Charlie LaManna was LaManna's funeral home.
Uh-huh.
He was a, big guy in the town.
Mm-hmm.
And he pulled up with his big car. And Tina with her head out the window screaming out, Charlie LaManna's gone in there. That's all I remember.
They could have made a lot of money in those days. We could have taken pictures as a piece
Right,
of candy.
blackmail. Wasn't too far from Storyville,
No.
but it wasn't Storyville. Storyville was still up back then, huh?
Sure.
No.
No? I thought they didn't tear that down to World War One.
Yeah, but this was after World War One. After all, I was
Oh,
born.
that's true, that's true. You're right.
I'm a child.
You're right. I get it confused. Okay, so let's talk about your dad. What was the company that he worked for, where he was in
H.T.
sales?
Cotton.
Yeah, H.T. Cotton.
It was a wholesale grocer outfit. And he was one of their chief salesmen.
I didn't know him then. I wasn't born.
No, that was way before you were born, huh?
I don't know.
Yeah, well,
I can remember playing, he would have these boxes with rice, beans, all kinds of products.
mm-hmm.
And I would have my friends over on Cleveland Avenue, and we would play with all the stuff that he would bring home. I guess he would show it to his customers,
And when was it that H.T. Cotton, were they in any kind of a specialty outfit? Because I know
No.
Central Grocery became a specialty type of store from the beginning.
The what?
Central Grocery was
Oh, that was entirely different. This is a
Okay.
big place. H.T. Cotton was a place
long
where
did he- how
grocery
long did he
stores
work
bought
for
their things.
It was a
H.T. Cotton?
I
distributor.
don't know how long.
It was a
Well, when did he
distributor.
open the Central Grocery?
He opened Central Grocery when I was about 9 years old, I would think.
It was shortly before I was born. About 1925.
So how did that happen? Like, what prompted him to go into business for himself? Anything, or
No. His friend, Mr. Lupo, came back from America.
that's who he bought the house
Lupo and
from?
DeMaio, yeah. They came back and...
Lupo and
Italy.
DeMaio, did they travel together all the time?
No, they were brothers-in-law. They had
Oh.
married sisters.
I see. So they went back to Italy and then came back again.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And they decided, they were talking, and Mr. Lupo said to Daddy, you know so much about groceries. Why don't you open up... They owned the store. They owned the property.
Mm-hmm.
Open up a place on Decatur and handle, different products. They handled, they actually imported groceries out and got things in. It was Greek, Syrian, and Italian products. And they prevailed on him to open up Central Grocery, and that's what he did.
Um,
Mm.
so they just owned the property
Mm-hmm.
and he did the grocery. So you remember those days?
Oh, sure.
Your mother never worked back then, right, when he was alive.
Mm-mm.
So who else worked in the store with him?
He had his nephew, Nick Lala.
Is Nick who found him when he had the stroke?
Yeah. In fact, I have a letter in my
Yeah,
files on
you
him.
read
He
that
read
to
it.
me, yeah. So how many years was he working there before he had the stroke? It must have been just 3 or 4, huh?
Gosh, I don't remember.
Because
He
he
had
had
the
it
stroke
right
in
after,
1933.
right after you were
So
born.
evidently he was there from 25 to 33, right?
I would think so back then.
7 years.
You remember those days?
Huh?
You would go to the store and
8
what was
years.
it like?
He didn't have the stroke at 33. He died at 33.
Oh, I take it back. He had the stroke in
I was
28.
trying to think. 'Cause I was like 12 or 13
Yeah, I was
years
5
old.
years old when he died. So he had the first stroke in 28. So maybe he was there 3 years.
Was it 28, 17, 27? It was longer than that. It wasn't 28. It was about maybe 1930.
No, sis, he had his first stroke when I was 3 months old.
Oh, you were born in
I was
38?
born in September of 28.
Mm.
Mother said he had his first stroke, and right around Christmas time of 28, I was 3 months.
Mm.
And so that's the only reason I know when the first stroke
I can
came.
remember Mother used to love canaries, and she had about, I guess, about 9 or 10 of them. And she had them in the back, where the servants' quarters were, these big cages.
Mm-hmm.
And when Daddy was sick, she told me to feed the canaries and take care of them and give them water every day. And there was one cage with about 4 of them that I forgot. So she went to check on her birds, and she found 3 of them dead,
Mm.
and one of them just about to die. I told you that story.
No, I don't think so.
So she was furious. She was screaming, and she grabbed the one that was about to die, and it was my birthday. She lit the oven, got it warm.
Hold on. Hello?
And she put it in the oven?
No, it's her
And she
granddaughter.
turned it off and just turned it warm.
Oh, this is Susu. Good, how are you? Okay.
Had my Christmas tree
Okay.
there. I was telling you about the berries?
Yeah, the canaries.
Oh, yeah. So she took and she lit the oven, got a little warmth in the oven, and turned it off, and had a blanket in the oven, and she put the canary in there that was dying. And she said, "You better pray." Daddy was in bed. He was sick. He had his stroke. "You better pray that that bird lives." And that little thing, I kept watching it. It flew around, laid on its back, and died.
What'd you do?
So then what she did, she spanked me. Then she had the nerve, I'm crying. It's my birthday, and she's got my birthday cake. And she says, "Now go show your birthday cake to your daddy. And if you cry and tell him I whipped you, God help you." That's my mama.
Well,
It's a
it
God's
sounds like the
truth,
only
but-
person who did anything right was your dad. He walked on water and everyone else was terrible.
That's right. So then I walked up with the cake, and my eyes were red. And he said, "Baby, what's the matter, darling?" And I went, "Mother whipped me." So she grabbed me, she brought me in the back and whipped me again. Spanked me again. Because I was crying in front of Daddy.
Poor guy, he couldn't do anything to stop her either.
Imagine if your dad crying for your daddy. I'll kill you. All he had to say was, "Baby, what's the matter?"
So back to Central Grocery, you remember those years before he had the stroke? It was like about 3 years, I guess we figured out.
So,
What was it
I'm
like?
trying to think, did he have the store? He did. When he went to Italy to get his mother. He did.
Sure. He
In
had
fact,
the
there's a
store.
card there,
Yeah,
framed.
yeah, the framed
And I
card.
think that's 19 what? Go get that card.
Because when he came home and he had his stroke, they took me to Central Grocery. His mother was still nursing me, and she was at Central
That's
Grocery
right,
working.
that's right, that's right.
My mother was in the store working, Susu, and they took me to Central Grocery so every so many hours because I was nursing.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. That's what she told me.
This
So
is
she's-
1923
Mm-hmm.
that he wrote these cards.
So he had opened the
Yeah.
store before then.
Right.
Okay.
And he
So,
went to Italy to get his mother. And Uncle Vincent, he went with his brother, did not serve in the Italian army, and he had a hard time getting back. So it took him about 6 months to get him, that they could take Uncle Vincent back.
so Uncle Vincent lived here,
Mm-hmm.
but when he went back there, he had a problem leaving again.
Right.
But they came back with
they
their
came
mother.
back then.
And who else came over? And that was Aunt Jocko was born over there, right?
Mhm.
And then she came over.
They were all born over there, but my father and Uncle
Uncle
Pete-
Nick was born over there and
He was
came
there a
over.
long time.
Hmm?
This is September 10th, 1923. The other one is June 16th,
I'm
1923.
telling you, they were there
6
for
months.
6 months.
Mhm.
Oh, boy.
Wow.
I would have.
So when did when there's some story about when Uncle Nick came over? He came straight to New Orleans, right, Uncle Nick? He was on a boat that came straight to New Orleans, and was Aunt Jocko with him?
Yeah, but did they stopped over in New York? They all had to.
Did they?
I think so.
Did they go through Ellis Island?
Yeah.
They all had to go to Ellis Island. They
Really?
couldn't
Because
come-
when me and Daddy went to Ellis Island, we couldn't find Shalacy. But they could have spelled it wrong,
Maybe so.
you know.
Oh,
Or maybe
Ellis
we-
Island. They had people that came from Ellis Island whose name was Bruno. And when they said, what is your name? And they'd say Bruno, and where you're from, Palermo, they would write Palermo.
Palermo.
And the poor people came over and that was their name.
Yeah.
It was really wasn't
That's
their
how they
name.
got their names, too. A lot of them. Palermo, Bologna,
Oh. yeah.
Cefalù.
Because
all
that
of
was the
those
place they
names.
came from. So they didn't even use their right names. They put it on their, the poor people didn't know what to do, that they used the name.
You saw that in The Godfather.
Yeah.
Probably did.
Yeah. So, Uncle Nick and Jocko came over together, and she was just a young child, right?
She was young. She
11.
was about, no, she was older than that. She was about 13, 12 or 13. And she came over, my grandfather, her father, sent her first class. And Uncle Nick went all the way down to
Was
the
he a
bottom.
stowaway?
Huh?
Was he a stowaway?
No.
He was in
He
steerage.
just was in the inferior part of the ship.
He didn't come over illegally?
Not Uncle Nick.
You sure?
I'm positive it was Uncle Vincent came over.
Because Uncle Nick was so afraid to be, what you call it, when you get your
Because he
citizen-
wasn't an American citizen.
Yeah, but he was afraid to do it. He
Well,
was
I don't
afraid to
know.
get his citizenship
really
because he
don't
was
know.
afraid they'd send him back. That's what
I
I,
don't
understood,
know.
that he came over.
That wasn't Uncle Vincent?
Uncle Nick is the one, because I went with him when he was studying to get his citizenship. And I was there the day he was...
He was an
took-
illegal alien?
I'm not sure, but I always did feel that he had something that he was scared to death
Yeah.
of.
Was he the one that didn't know any English and all he knew how to say was chocolate, so that's all he ate the
No,
entire
No, that was
Aunt
Uncle
Lily.
Carmelo.
Aunt Lily. Aunt Lily chocolate.
Oh, maybe so. And Uncle Carmelo couldn't speak English when he came over to visit, and he was on the train, and the poor thing was so frustrated because he couldn't tell them what he wanted while he was,
Mhm.
trying to eat. And I don't know what he ate. He
And
might have
these-
had pie the whole way.
These are all of the 16 brothers and sisters. One of them was Carmelo, one of them was
Carmelo-
Lily.
But he only came over to visit. He didn't come over
Oh, he
to
didn't
live
come
here.
over to live.
He came over to visit around in the 1960s or so because I was teaching.
So who
At
else
5.
ended up coming to live here besides your father and Aunt Jocko and Uncle Nick?
Everybody did, with
Vincent.
the exception of Uncle Carmelo and Aunt Nicolina.
Oh, okay. Now, what was your father's full name?
They didn't have middle names.
Giacchino.
Giacchino. Gioachino.
And then Uncle Nick was
His name
Niccolo.
was Niccolo.
Niccolo, and then Jocko.
Giacomina.
No middle
Aunt
name.
Nina, no. Aunt Nina was Antonina.
Mm-hmm.
Aunt Annie was Annie, I guess.
That's what I don't understand, how one was Antonina and the other one was
Anna.
Anna. She had to be pretty close to Antonina.
Yeah.
How could Anna
Antonina
and
was
Antonina?
Anthony.
Yeah, it's all the same.
Well, no, Anthony's not Anna.
No, but I mean Anna and Aunt Nina, one was Anna, one was Antonina. That's pretty much the same.
Well, one's Anne, one's Antoinette. Really?
That's right. They're two different names. Anne and Antoinette.
Yeah, well, they called her
They're
Nina.
similar, you're right.
Yeah.
But they were running out of names.
They were the
Well, those
first
were the
two
first
girls.
two girls.
Oh.
That's kind of quick.
And then
Scratch
they
that
had,
theory.
They had Uncle Vic,
Giacchino, they had Uncle Vic,
Uncle Vincent.
Well,
Vincent,
what are their real names?
Hmm?
Vic
His name
is what?
Victor.
Victor?
Victor, Vincent, Vincenzo,
Rosario.
and they had one by the name of Antonio. That was Ninuzzi, they used to call him.
Tony. We had Giuseppe, who was born the first
Ninuzzi
son.
came to America, but he died when we lived on Cleveland. He was laid out in my house. I remember that.
And your mother, what was her full name?
Her full-
Antonina.
She was an Antonina
She was
too.
an Antonina also.
And Tina was
Nicolina.
Nicolina.
And when Uncle Nick came over, he married Nicolina.
Mm-hmm.
He was Niccolo, and he married Nicolina. And she called
But on her
herself
birth
Colina.
certificate, they had no. She was on the birth certificate. It was Colina.
But she called herself Nicolina.
No, she called herself Colina because her name was supposed to be Nicolina. But when they baptized her, they wrote Colina.
So who called her what?
Everybody
We
called
called
her
her
Colina.
Colina.
We
Colina.
called her Tina.
She was supposed to be named Nicolina.
And they moved in with you on South Claiborne, as we talked
Everybody
about.
did.
She raised me. She and my grandmother and my mother and your
Oh,
grandmother.
so let's talk about Tabresh for a second.
Harbresh.
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 What, any theories?
Did not give you the paper to read?
I
But
think
the
you
Harbresh
did.
people?
Yeah, I think you did, but I don't remember it.
Is it Ardbresh or Hardbresh?
I think it's H. I'm
Is
not
it only
sure.
the people in
AR.
Contessa that speak that language?
Maybe it's AR.
It's AR. There's no H on that. It's Arbresh.
Harbresh. A-R-B-R-E-S.
You know, the Arbresh.
I think so.
There's a lot of, it's Greek.
It's Greek.
Yeah, the derivation is Greek.
So are we Greek, really?
Well, from hundreds of years back, it was a war with the Turks, and these Albanians came over the Ionian Sea into Italy and Sicily,
Uh-huh.
and our ancestors came into Sicily. But
So
that's
do you
like
think
300-400
that
years
that
ago.
we're Greek, or do you think that we're Italian?
Oh my God! With all the intermarriage, we're Italian.
But how do you say that? Our blood is not Italian.
All the
They only
intermarriage.
intermarried with themselves, though.
Yeah, that's true.
They
did.
married within themselves and they all spoke Arbresh. There's not an Italian conversation in the house. All of our lives.
For hundreds of years.
I always knew some of the things they were saying.
Well, that's because of the little town,
Yeah, but I mean,
Contessa.
still, they were all intermarrying.
They spoke a branch in Contessa.
How can you say that they mixed with the Italians when they never spoke Italian and they lived
There was
in an
never
Italian
They all knew
country?
how to speak Italian.
Oh, they spoke two
Oh,
languages.
Sure, my daddy spoke Italian fluently.
Only because
All
he
of
was
them.
educated in Monreale.
Oh,
And now in Sicily,
I spoke
there
Italian
is no.
too.
Yeah, but sis, the people in Contessa right now
No, they
strictly
still
speak
speak
Arbresh.
Arbresh, yeah.
They don't speak Italian. But now all the schools teach only Italian. There's no teaching in Contessa in Arbresh. Although they all speaking Arbresh. And they're all at the table, that's all that they're speaking is Arbresh. But when the children go to school, it's all Italian. But in our family ourselves, it was all Italian. And Daddy knew Italian
was-
because he had
It
the
was Italian
education.
or Abresh in our
What?
family? You said in our family it was all Italian.
No, I meant to say it was all
A
our breast
breast,
when we
yeah.
were when they were all at our tables.
Mm.
It was all Italian, and I mean all our breast and at Aunt Nina's house, they all spoke our breast.
You know my two favorite Abresh sayings?
What?
Spavinde marmuluk
Spavind him marmaluk. What does
and
that mean
It's a
again?
spasm of a moron, like
Yeah.
a Maluk is a moron.
the other one is Makari Fundi Makesh.
Makari fundi makesh. Even my fundies laugh.
That was my mom. What did I tell you? My mom, Sylvana, my maternal grandmother,
Uh-huh.
she was the funniest lady in the world. She didn't even realize how funny she was. I used to come home from school, Loyola, wherever, and I don't know, just things she said. I would fall out laughing. She didn't know she was funny. Very funny.
So let's talk about your parents and their social life for a minute. What did they do? I know your father was always doing plays.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
He was director
with
of the...
how did he get into that? And did your mom participate? And did they have friends
oh, no,
that came
my mother
over
didn't participate at all. When he kissed the leading lady, though, she'd have a fit.
every time?
No, it's only that one time that I remember.
Oh, and that you have that picture. Who's
Mhm.
who's? Isn't it somebody's mother or something or grandmother?
Yeah, that was, he's dead. Calamagno, Dr. Calamagno. It's his grandmother.
Dina?
Dino's grandmother and Gustavo, Gus, Dr. Gus.
Uh-huh.
Can't get over the
That was his
name.
grandmother, and she suspected that they had
No,
sparks or something.
it was ridiculous. I mean, ridiculous.
Not your daddy.
No, and not only that, he was old. She was a woman older than Daddy. You
An
know,
older woman?
She was older than
Since
he
no one
was.
but Dutz,
Hmm.
if he was Daddy's son, Daddy probably spooked everybody.
No, I don't think Daddy spooked anybody.
My daddy was the most handsome, charming creature God ever
Yeah, but
made.
he adored my mother.
Oh, he probably flirted with this leading lady too.
I doubt it. No.
So, how often would he do these plays and everything? It was it through the Italian American Society?
No, it was, it was called the,
Circolo?
Circolo was Loyola. I forgot what it was called.
But it was like an acting
It was
club.
an acting group of Italian people.
Okay.
It wasn't a brush, it was strictly Italian.
So he was with other Italians at that point.
Oh, yeah.
Not
He was
necessarily.
the director of the Dramatic Society.
Not
it was
necessarily
the
people
Italian
from
Dramatic
Kentucky.
Society.
Oh, okay. The Italian Dramatic Society. And did they do opera or did they
Mhm,
do
They just did plays.
plays? Well,
Mhm.
do you remember the plays? No.
I remember seeing them, but I don't remember what they were.
Mm-hmm.
Weren't you in one?
I was in one, I had one line.
What was your line?
Eccola rosa, mama. I had to bring the woman roses. Look at the roses, mama.
Is that Italian or
It's
Abresh?
Italian.
Eccola.
Eccola rosa, mama. And I gave it a rose.
So the plays were in Italian.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. And where did they put them on?
At the Italian Hall, the Union Italian Hall on Esplanade, right off of
Rampart.
Rampart.
Oh, okay. So it was right by your house, really.
Mhm.
And did they have friends that came over and stuff like that? Did they entertain at the house?
They didn't do any entertaining or anything like that, but I can remember friends coming over, my father's friends.
Uh-huh. Did they ever go out to eat, or were all the meals at
People
home?
didn't go out to eat then.
They
If-
went to parties though.
If you
because
went,
I
but
got-
if you
I
went
have
to
pictures.
a restaurant then,
I have pictures of Daddy and Mother. She's in an evening gown. He's in a big
formal wear.
formal, because he's standing right next to Mr. Lupo or DeMaya, one of them. Mother is on the stairway, and Papa is sitting at a table. Mama's not there, but that was a big social to do. It was probably a dinner,
Mhm.
party, and dance.
Mhm.
And they are all gussied up in their fine clothes.
But as far as eating out, only poor sad people ate out.
People
True.
who didn't have a good meal at home.
Oh, that's it. Poor man, he has to eat in restaurants. I'll never forget that. Poor man. Poor man, he has to eat in restaurants. It was awful.
So what were the meals like at home?
Meals were plenty of meals. We were all too fat.
The main meal was at 12 o'clock.
12 o'clock, midday.
I remember
Every
my
day?
grandfather
Every day.
walking up the driveway as the bells from St. Augustine Church were ringing. And that's my young memory of Daddy was dead already, and Papa was coming home for dinner, at lunch. And Mama had a big meal for him. He ate, and then he would take a rest. But that was every day. And I remember also, I was 10 when Mama died. I was 8 when Papa died. And after he died, I remember watching her so closely every time that bell rang at 12 o'clock from St. Augustine. She would cry to break her heart. She'd stand in the kitchen, and the tears were just, she was wet with the face. And I was young, but I knew she's missing Papa, you know?
Mhm.
I really remember that.
How long was it in between their deaths?
2 years.
Mm.
I was 8 when he died, and I was 10 when she died. She died May 10th,
1939.
1939.
I remember when she died.
And so what did the meals consist of, the big meal? Was there always like a pasta?
Every day a pasta. It wasn't with gravy. It could be with red beans. It could be with cauliflower, and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But every day had pasta.
And then a meat dish?
Uh-huh.
Was it usually like a roast or?
I don't remember.
Roast
I don't know.
chicken,
Well, that was Sunday.
T-bones.
Sunday dinner was
Pork
always
chops.
3 meats. We'd start off with spaghetti and meatballs. Then we'd have veal roast, because veal then was cheaper than beef. Today veal is very expensive. And fried chicken. Every Sunday. 3 different meats.
Now who did the cooking? Did your Hannah do the cooking?
Mama
Amelia.
did the cooking.
Oh, at home, Mama.
And then when she died, Amelia did the
Amelia.
cooking.
Because you always say you cook soul food Italian.
Hmm?
You always say you cook soul food Italian.
Yeah.
On Claiborne, though, Amelia wasn't cooking. It was Johanna.
Must have been, I don't know.
Johanna cooked on Claiborne because you were in school, and I remember Johanna was always in the kitchen cooking, and my mother would always say, you have to teach her how to cook.
So every Sunday there were 3 meats. There was fried chicken, veal,
Fried chicken, veal,
meatballs.
and meatballs.
Meatballs.
And what did everybody do after they ate all that? Did they just sleep?
We never did get up from the table.
Really?
That's God's truth. We used to sit down there and crack nuts, and talk. Well, I'm sure the younger kids would,
Mhm.
but we were always at the table on Sunday,
The whole day
the whole day.
till you could eat again, and then you ate dinner.
Well,
But it
we
was
wasn't
different from me. The way it was for you was one way, but
Yeah.
for me, it's a whole different story.
She was
Because
many years later.
on Sunday, when we had our dinner, for one thing, every Sunday when we had dinner at Tina's, Sunday dinner was at Tina's house on Esplanade. It was no longer over on Claiborne. Mama and Papa were dead. And so my mother would always contribute to that big Sunday meal. And after dinner was over, it was a scattered thing. Nobody sat around the table.
Mhm.
John was off
She was in a different
sailing.
era.
I had a completely different thing. And I was usually going to a football game with either a date or Badutz and I would go off with some of our friends because we had a lot of mutual friends.
Mhm.
But we did go to a lot of football games, and sometimes we went sailing with John and Dottie.
Mhm.
And And Bootsy had lots of his friends that came over, and they'd play cards. My mother was always dozing in the chair, and teen Uncle Nick and all. And you, at the time, were kind of coming in with your babies. You had little babies. You and
On
Benny.
Esplanade, you mean?
On
yeah.
Esplanade. You and Ben, and it was always Benny, then Bonnie, and Benny, Bonnie, Barbara. You
This
know,
was
Mickey
at Tina's
Bride.
house in
Yeah.
Esplanade?
Mhm.
Okay, so had they sold North Claiborne by then?
No.
No,
Claiborne
mine
Avenue is
lived
where
there.
I lived until,
But Tina moved out and they would have dinner
oh
there.
yeah, they moved and bought their home on Esplanade Avenue,
What was the address?
1830 Esplanade. 1830 Esplanade. Because Aunt Nina's house was 1322 Esplanade. And Tina's house was closer towards Galvez, between Claiborne and Galvez, which was walking
Tina
distance.
moved to North Robinson before she bought Esplanade. She bought a little house on North Robinson.
1122 North Robinson. I can remember numbers. 1122 North Robinson. And I was a little bitty girl there because I was about 4 when the man came with the pony. And Baditz and I were each taking pictures on that pony. The little house. But Tina and Uncle Nick had a nice big 2-story house on Esplanade, and this was where the family met
Mm-hmm.
because
That was 1830 Esplanade.
and by then I was getting out of high school, I was going to college, and I lived on Claiborne, but almost every day I stopped at Tina's and had my dinner because Tina cooked all the time for us. But it's too.
Mm-hmm.
That was a different time though, because you were already married.
I must have been.
I was 14 or so when you married, so I'm just getting into high school. So when I was in college, it was
I could
all-
remember North Robinson. When I think about this, I could scream. We would charge 2 cents if you wanted to come into Tina's backyard and watch me and Bootsy fight. Isn't that ridiculous? And I would sit there, hell out of him, and he'd beat the hell out of me.
Did you make any money?
I don't remember. It's been so long ago. 2 cents. You want to go see him
So
fight?
your mother, before he had the stroke, was the Queen of England, right?
Mm.
I mean, what was her life like? She had servants and she had her mother and father to do things, and she slept late, right?
Oh, God, she slept 11:30 every day.
She loved to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And then that changed drastically. So tell about that.
She just loved to sleep. In fact, when she was born, she didn't wake up in the middle of the night and holler, Mama. She'd holler, Tita. That was me.
Oh, really?
And my mother would say, Sis, she's calling you. Get up and go rock her back to sleep.
But that didn't, I mean, you know, her sleeping didn't last long.
No, because
No.
then she had to go to the store and she
So I
ran.
was born.
She ran Central Grocery then.
Daddy got sick when I was 3 months, so she was in the grocery
And
store
so this was
very early in
right.
the morning.
This was his first stroke. So he had his first stroke in what year?
28.
28. And that's when Nick Lala found him in the store.
Mhm.
What time did he find him?
At his desk.
Yeah. Was it in the morning or
In the morning.
In the
In the
morning.
morning. So he just must have gotten to work and had the stroke. And do you remember that day?
No, I guess I must have. I don't know.
Don't
Not too
remember
much.
too much about it. And you were too young to remember, Ken. So
I was just born.
yeah.
Only
Yeah.
stroke I remember was his 5th one.
Oh, he had 5 strokes.
One a year.
Oh.
And on October the 4th was my mother's birthday. And we were all around the table on Claiborne Avenue. I remember this so vividly, and I was sitting there.
He was telling a joke.
I don't remember what he was saying, but all of a sudden I saw him do this. He grabbed the napkin, and he put it to his mouth. He started rubbing his mouth back and forth and back. And I was looking at him wondering, what's happening, you know? And he was rubbing his mouth. Next thing I knew, John jumped up and picked Daddy up in his arms and carried him to the bed.
What do you think he was doing with the napkin?
He was
Must
having a
have
stroke.
scared to death. He must have realized it's happening. He must have
Mhm.
felt something. And he was nervous, and he was just wiping his mouth, rubbing it, like, just rubbing his mouth. It was an act of fear, I think, you know. But that's in my brain burn because I can remember little, but thinking, what's happening?
Mhm.
What's wrong?
Mhm.
Why is he wiping his mouth so hard? And he kept just with that napkin. And then John jumped up and scooped him up like he was a paper doll and carried him to the bed. Next thing I know, they made me get out. They were
Mhm.
shoving Badutz and I outside.
Mhm.
And
So
he died 4 days later, October 8th.
after that day,
He died October 8th, 1933.
what was it like while he was in the wheelchair all those years? Was he depressed or
He used to do a lot of reading,
really?
plenty of reading.
Only time he cried was one day he was trying to ask for his glasses. And Badutz and I were laughing and acting silly. We were just running around the dining room. My ma was there, and then my mother was there too. And all of a sudden, he kept saying something to us. And I kept going up to him saying, "What? What are you saying? What?" Almost really annoying. What? And Badutz would go, "What?" And we'd laugh. All of a sudden, my mother walked in, and I was in another room, and evidently she saw him, and the tears were coming down his eyes. And she said, "What's wrong?" And he answered her, "Promise me you will always let them know that I wasn't stupid." And boy, she turned around and came behind us. She said, "What did you say to your father?" She grabbed me and slapped my legs off. Pow, 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 pow. She grabbed the Badutz. And I can remember thinking, whoa, I did it,
Mhm.
I wasn't even 5 quite. I know I wasn't 5. This happened before my 5th birthday because I remember the 5th birthday. And I knew I really hurt his feelings. I felt it. You know how you feel guilt? As
Mhm.
little as I was, I knew I did something ugly. And that's one of the regrets I had, that I made him cry. Because all the time before that, my only recollection for Daddy was sat in his lap. And he
Mhm.
used to have his arms around me. And
Mhm.
I sat in his lap, and I felt like I was really,
Mhm.
Queen of Rex, going down the street.
Why are you fidgeting?
Hmm?
Why are you
I think I'm
fidgeting?
going to bathroom.
Oh, you do?
Mhm.
Well, I'll let you do that.
There are parts about Daddy when he was paralyzed and all that. Didn't want the grandmother to bathe him. So who else was there? My mother left the store, tired, exhausted, and put my daddy in the tub and bathed him. She
Every
told me
night.
every night. She told me that too. She used to tell me those stories.
She really,
Oh, she was quite a woman.
she really
After
was.
he died,
Where's the Kleenex?
she told me she sat in the kitchen one day. Is this thing on?
Yeah, it's okay.
And she sat in the kitchen and she said she knew. She said, "I have 4 children that I'm responsible for. I'm responsible for 4 children, and this youngest one's 5.
Uh-huh.
And she said she put her hand down and she thought, oh my God, please don't let me break down. And I'm going to lose my mind. I'm scared. She kept saying, I was so scared. And that really impressed me.
Yeah.
Because I realized she was only about 36 years old, She was about 31 when I was born, and that's when he had his first stroke. So she's about 36. I was 5. And that was another thing, too. He cried so hard one day. That was the day that she was angry with me. And he cried, and he said, my dreams really are not going to happen. She said, what is that? He said, I always knew my 4 children would finish university. I wanted them all to get a college education. And she said, I make you a promise. Everyone will finish college. I promise you that.
And she did
And
that
she
by
said
herself.
that to me so many times. I promised your father, you will go to college and you will get a degree. You're going to finish. And she always said university. You will finish the university. And she used to say that so many times. She would talk to me. And she would say things about how she'd fall asleep on the kitchen table, you know. She'd fall asleep and then she'd get up. She'd be counting her money. She came home with bags, with her money in the bags.
Uh-huh.
And she'd count them. I can remember her counting and stacking stuff on the kitchen table. And she said to me one day, you will never know how scared I was after he died. I kept thinking, God, give me the strength and the health to raise them. I promised him they'll all graduate from university. And that, she was some
Ma
kind of
B.
lady.
Yeah.
That's open for a reason.
What?
That's open for a reason.
She wants to open it, sis. She wants it open. Just come sit down and pay attention.
All right, I can close it.
No!
Why?
Because.
Because what?
Because.
No,
You're doing this on film, you're being stubborn.
I don't care. Why should it be open?
For the lighting, for the camera.
Oh, all right.
You gotta give her a
Give me a
reason.
reason.
You gotta give her a reason.
We talked about, I think, probably enough depressing stuff.
Yeah. Talk about the happy stuff.
Yeah, really. The
was
interesting
so
thing is just how your mother totally took over.
Well, she was a dynamo.
Mm-hmm.
4'11".
So how long so she sold out the Central Grocery not too long after his first stroke, or she worked there
Had
for
to
a
be after
while?
his first stroke because they didn't want to have to keep. Do you recall this? All I know is her telling me they took me to Central Grocery so she could nurse me.
They never did that. They used to pick her up and bring her home to nurse her instead of giving her a bottle.
Well, they didn't say that. They said they took me to Central Grocery.
Well,
I'm
they
telling
didn't.
you, Mother told me that.
Well, I don't
Mother
remember that. I
said
remember
they
Papa
used to
going
take
together.
me to go to the grocery. They would drive in the car, take me to the Central Grocery
But
to
who
nurse.
would have driven a baby? My
Well,
mom would
Mom
have
might have
had.
been in the car with him.
No. He used to pick up Mother at the store, bring her home, and Nick Lawler
No,
would be
she
in the
told me
store.
that. You
How
know, it was-
often would they do that? Every couple hours?
How do I know? How could they go get her out of the store? every
I'm
couple
telling you, every 3 or 4 hours they brought her home to get to nurse the baby. That's what I remember. No bottle at all. In fact, I gave Badutz a bottle because Teddy had a bottle, and nobody knew it.
Who's Teddy?
Teddy was a cousin that was about 2 months older than Badutz.
That's Philip
And they used to give
Ciaccio's
him-
brother.
Oh.
They
big
used to
brother.
give him a bottle, so I bought a bottle and used to give Uncle Badutz a bottle.
And how old were you then? 12? 13?
9.
Oh, 9? So you were 9 when your father had his first stroke?
No,
I was older than that.
12. I was
I was
Born.
12 going on 13.
Oh, okay.
That's when I had to bring my birthday cake, don't you remember?
Yeah. Okay, so how long after the stroke did she get out of Central Grocery? A year? 2 years?
It wasn't very long after because she couldn't keep it up.
And then she sold out to the Lupos,
Lupos.
and that's when they had owned the building, but that's when they started really running the
Yeah.
grocery. They kept the grocery. They
Mhm.
bought the grocery from
Mhm.
her. And
And actually, it was never Mr. DeMaio. He was always a helper. It was always Mr. Lupo.
oh, I see. And then with the money, she bought the grocery on North Robertson.
Well, she rented it for a while.
Was it a grocery first?
It was a
or-
grocery. The
Uh-huh.
Scotinas owned the building and owned the grocery. And they rented the grocery to her. They got out of business. And she ran the grocery. And then after a while, she bought the property from the Scotinas.
And then that's where she worked for the next till she died.
Mhm.
Every day practically
Mhm.
till she died.
from probably 1929 till 1955.
And that's where she made all the money to put y'all through college and university and everything
University.
Mhm.
else. And she would sell single cigarettes.
Penny apiece.
Penny cigarettes, penny cookies, Dad's cookies. she gave lagniappe. She cut ham, cheese, and made sandwiches with big jumbos. All the black men used to come into the grocery and get their big, big poor boys and their big jumbo for a nickel.
What's a jumbo?
A jumbo was
It
like,
was like
it's almost like a 2 liter. It was
like
so
the
big,
red drink,
you know?
the big bottle
Oh,
of red
You
really?
drink.
had sarsaparilla, you had red drink, and you had cream soda was white.
Mm-hmm.
But the workmen, I can remember workmen always coming in and getting sandwiches. And then when I got old enough, I started cutting. You were working in the grocery too,
Mm-hmm.
but I remember being old enough to work in the grocery and make the sandwiches and help out, but it's helped out. We all did at certain times. And they would get their big sandwich in their jumbo, and they'd go sit outside of the grocery
Mm-hmm.
on the cement, and they'd eat their sandwich and drink their jumbo. And I can remember also going over to the grocery with her in the morning, and she would get the bread out of the big bread box. She had a great big bread box out of the store,
Mm-hmm.
outside. She'd bring that in. I remember seeing chickens in the chicken coops outside.
Would she kill the chickens, or she got eggs from them?
I don't remember that. All I know is there were chickens outside. Chickens and
She
chickens.
must
You
have got
remember?
eggs from them.
You don't remember the chickens?
I remember the bread, but
There were chickens, because I can remember looking and seeing how one stack was here, then there was another stack, then another stack.
yeah, but she didn't kill them. She must have sold them
She might have
live.
sold, but
She
I don't
sold
remember
them,
how
or
ever
she
killed
could have gotten eggs.
Uh-uh.
No, they weren't hens.
Well, they may have been laying eggs. I don't know if they had a roost or what
But
she
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 was
used to
wasn't
have a
selling
big, great
I don't
big
remember
tank in the
chickens.
back of the store that people came in and they bought kerosene for their lamps.
Oh, really?
We
What time
also,
would she get there in the morning?
she
Walk.
walked,
But what time?
6:30. She opened up so early, 6:30, and she came home sometimes at 10, 11 at night.
Didn't she have a man that would always walk her home?
Willie
Mm.
Perry.
God
Lived
bless
across
her.
Willie
the
Perry
street.
used to sit on the step, and he
Oh.
would get so frustrated because he was so worried about it. He was about 6'4", 6'5",
Big black
big,
man.
huge man,
Sweet guy.
beautiful looking man. And he used to come in the store because I was always sitting there. I was young, really young, and he'd say, Miss Shalacy, would you please go home? She'd say, well, go to bed, Willie. No, Miss Shalacy, I won't go to bed till you leave. Now, please close up the store. It was like she wanted to make that last nickel,
Mm-hmm.
And
Finally?
she carried her money in a paper bag. Willie walked her home.
She had it all in that big satchel, though. She had a satchel. All of her money was in bags, and it was in that satchel.
But that
He
sweet
walked
guy was
behind
sweet
her.
enough to walk her home.
He never walked with her. He walked about 4 steps behind her.
Why?
It was like,
In those days, black people.
you didn't walk with.
Mm-hmm.
You walked behind. It was a sign of
What a sweet man.
sort of like respect.
What a sweet
When she
man.
got in the house, he turned around and went home. And he died young too. He died very young with a
Mm.
stroke.
So was it sort of a mixed neighborhood back
Oh
then?
yeah.
Yeah, very big.
I played with all the blacks and the whites. I grew up with blacks and whites. We played pitch the tin can.
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 3, I Spy. All of
Not
that.
Claiborne and Esplanade, but North Robertson,
Robertson
a
and
block
Kellerick.
away.
Uh-huh. All the
Just
little
like-
Creole cottages,
Yeah.
they lived all up
We
in
played
there.
with all of my mother's, all of her customers' children. Miss Gambina's children, and
Uh-huh.
all of them, the Provenzanas, the Camanitas. They must have had 14 kids, the Camanitas. All of the ones. And then all of these black ladies down the street were always bringing casseroles to my mother.
Food.
She had all kinds of really good food. They'd say, Miss Shalacy, I made a casserole of this, that. They loved her.
Why did they do that?
Very kind.
They were just doing it to be
I
nice?
think they kind of felt sorry. They knew she was a widow and she was working hard, and they were and she gave credit to most of them.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they couldn't pay. I can remember one lady, especially Miss Quill. Oh God, she would charge $10 and pay $2. She
Uh-huh.
never could catch up, and every time she'd pay a little bit, she'd say, "Don't you think I'm doing good, Miss Shalacy? Don't you think I'm doing good?" Oh, We had so much fun. Edith and I we grew up on that corner. The Buissons lived right across the street from the store, and they had 10 children, and every time she came home with another baby, I was in that house all day. My mother never wondered where I was. I was at the Buissons.
Now, what about when your father died? I know you've told me a story, Mubby, about you had to spend the night in the funeral home.
Yeah.
Tell that story.
Well, in those days, you didn't go home for a week. They'd serve you dinner. You know, they'd have a big dining room with dinner, and then you went to sleep in the funeral home.
We had lots of bedrooms,
Bedrooms and bathrooms.
and most of them had the twin beds.
So what was that night like?
When my father died,
Where was the funeral home?
Lamanas
Lamanna.
on Rampart.
I'll never forget. When my daddy died, I'm coming into the funeral home with my mother. Wait, no, that wasn't it. When Uncle Vincent died, Aunt Mary had already been dead, which made John Shalacy lose his parents, you know? His second parent. Are you listening?
Uh-huh.
And Aunt Jack was sitting there at the funeral home with the coffin of her brother Vincent. Now, my father's already dead, but my mother's alive. So I'm walking in with my mother, and I go to kiss Aunt Jacko, and she goes, "Oh, my other orphan." And Mother looked at me and said, "And what does that make me?" Exactly. She looked at me, she said, "What does that make me?"
I think
other
the
orphan.
funniest is when they told Giacomina, "Giacomina, go to bed. You know, don't just sit here. What you think I got in here, chicken?"
No, that's when we decided she was going to go to sleep, and we decided, me and Philly, were going to sleep in another bedroom, you know, next to hers. And so she could sleep, you see. Said, make her go to sleep and we'd stay up, we told her. Well, instead of staying up, because you had to stay up with the dead body.
Somebody had to be up at all
Yeah.
times.
So
It
we were
was
going
like
to
a
stay up,
vigil.
but we got tired, so we went to sleep. And then when we get up in the morning, Philly looks at me, we hear the snores, and Philly says, she's in front of that coffin and she's saying,
Yeah.
"And they tell me to go to sleep. And who's dead? A chicken?" Like this. She's talking to herself.
Yeah.
Or is she talking to the dead body?
Dead body.
And she says, "Here you are, my darling, lying ice cold.
Dead.
And I'm laying in the bed like a big fat hog."
Yeah, and another line she said is that, "And you must have been thinking, Giacomina, how can you sleep when I'm dead?"
We almost died laughing. All we did was say, "Oh my God, listen to this."
I think we're about out of tape. So maybe that's enough for today.
I remember once
Because-
when maybe you were talking about when my father died, my cousin's child died too. And the baby little coffin was right.
It was in the
Jerry
same
Marino.
funeral.
Same funeral home, Jerry
Right.
Marino.
They died
And,
within 5 minutes of each other.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
and they had the double funeral. And I'm sitting there with my Aunt Lily. I remember this. And she said, some woman, Italian woman, came along to Aunt Lily. Out of all of the sisters, Aunt Lily was really the one that was most American, you know, and said to her, "Lilia, you're not crying. Everybody's been up there crying but you." And she looked at her, Aunt Lily, and she said, "I don't have to cry to please anybody. I love my brother, and I know how I feel." She was furious.
Aunt Lily was the only one who told my grandfather to take a leap.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was like that. In other words, this old Italian woman telling
He
her
told
that
everybody
people are
who to
watching,
marry.
it's time for you to get up
You're
and
going to
cry.
marry this one. And they made the match, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But when Aunt Lily came to this country, Mark Raffanini was so in love with her. She was a beautiful woman.
She was
She
real
really
pretty.
was.
Blue
the
eyes
beauty.
and dark hair.
And the eyes, my God. Anyway, he did not, he didn't really approve of the fact that she was not in love with Mark.
Mm-mm.
It's as simple as that. And she was interested in
Frank Familia.
Frank Familla. And when he asked her a question, what did he ask her? You know, what's with you and Frank Familla? She answered him, what's it to you? He never got over it.
'Cause he was the
Papa?
one everybody listened to, you know.
What's it to you? She said to him.
But she wasn't even his daughter.
No,
She's his niece. But she knew he was really annoyed because he wanted Mark Graffinini. And you know what? After Mark Graffinini was married and had children, every Sunday he came over. And he'd always come over and he'd sit by my mother and he'd say, how's my flame?
Oh,
He was in love
I'll
with them.
remember that.
Wow.
I heard it.
the
Yes,
story.
How's
did.
my flame?
And everybody's carrying on, and
This
I'm
is
sitting with
recorded.
Philly, as usual, always with Philly. And they all throwing themselves in the coffin because everybody had to have their cry. Aunt Nina, Aunt
So,
Jocko, that,
you're
all
at-
of them, you know.
The coffin, and everyone's got to have their cry.
Oh yeah, they have to, everybody has to put on their show. That's the way they do it in Contessa.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden somebody realizes they're about to close the coffin and I have not kissed my father. So they all holler, wait, sister. Well, by that time, Philly and I were in hysterics. You know, you were watching them all screaming. We were starting to get nervous ourselves. So by the time I reached the coffin to kiss my daddy, I decided they're not going to close it. So I put my hand up and I said, you're not closing it. And I'm screaming. And Mr. LaManna kept saying, sis, move your head. And boom, they throw my hat into the coffin. So my daddy was buried with my hat. Then I get to
He
say,
had a hat.
then I go to St. Augustine's Church. And the thing
He
that
had
gets
a
me
hat.
is my Aunt Nina, my father's sister. She looks at me going into church with no hat. You know, and that was a sin then.
Oh,
She looks at me and she says, Vligon, which
Vligon.
means
Oh, that's-
shame.
shame on you.
And took a handkerchief. God, we used to, Philly and I would tell that story and die laughing. We were always, it was always she and I
That's the
together.
story I remember.
She and I together watching them all. You know?
Oh, God.
I remember once Philly crying so hard about something. And we wouldn't wear pants and we wore dresses and petticoats. And I can remember stooping over, and she was always sort of asthmatic and allergic to things. And she's crying, and as I stooped over, she blew her nose on my slip. I'll never forget that day. I turned and I said, "You gotta be crazy!" Blew her nose on my slip. I used to enjoy that cousin. I really did. It's a shame she died so young.
She was your friend.
She died young?
Mm.
All right, one last question before we sign off for the day. Who taught you that song about Benito Mussolini?
Papa,
How did he know about Benito Mussolini?
oh, he loved Benito Mussolini.
Oh, I guess that's
That was his hero.
really. So you remember that
That's
too?
Giovinezza, Giovinezza.
I know the dance song, Giovinezza.
Primavera di bellezza, al fascismo, l'azzolezza della nostra libertà. E Benito Mussolini, ea, ah, la, la. Now, I don't know if the Italian is right. You know? That's like Aunt Jocko, when she came, she went first class, and she would sit at the captain's table for dinner, and they would make her sing Daisy. I think Victoria and the family has a thing where she made, because they would say, Grandma Sheba, sing Daisy. And it sounded exactly like Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer true. But every word in the song sounded like, but was not the word. You follow what I mean?
No.
It was like Daisy, Daisy, give it the lunch to. You know what I mean?
She was just making it up.
Making it up. She maybe tried to say the English word, but you would have never recognized it. The funniest thing you ever heard in your life. I hope they've taped that. They were supposed to tape her, because we would say to her, Aunt Jocko, sing Daisy, like you did on the ship. God, it was so
So they
funny.
taught it to her on the ship, but she never really knew how to sing it, really?
I don't know if they taught it to her on the ship or she learned it before she got on the ship or what, but every single word sounded like an English word but wasn't the word at
It
all.
was just it was close, but not really.
Yeah, not at all. Well, what was so cute is the way she did it all of her life. She sang it the same way.
She was funny. I remember her.
Oh, gosh, she funny.
She has
Precious.
such a sense of humor.
Yeah, I remember her telling Juha stories
Mm-hmm.
in your house, Kenzie.
Mhm.
I remember one thing about her when your dad was a little boy and he was helping do something on LaSalle Street, and Celeste called me, one of the uh, neighbors, tenants, and said to me, Miss Baggett, Betty done caught his finger in an electric saw, and he almost cut it off. I said, where is he? And she said, Baptist Hospital. So Aunt Jocko was there. And I said, Aunt Jocko, I don't know if we lived in St. Bernard. We must have drive me to Baptist. So I'm in a car with her, and she's driving all the way to Baptist, and I'm saying my rosary. So we get to Baptist. He made a bad cut, but didn't cut his finger off.
Uh-huh.
So we got him in the car after he had stitches, and she's bringing me back, and she says, this is how she spoke. I want to ask you something. I said, what? When you were praying and we were going to the hospital, what were you praying for? I was praying that his finger would not be cut off. And if it was cut off, I said that I was praying that God would make it come back on. And she said, and you believe that? I said, yeah. She went, ah. Ah.
Oh, I wish I had known her better.
Oh, she was so funny.
She was fabulous.
All right, well, Kenzie's got to go, so this is it for today. But next
You
time
gonna
I
put my
come in
house back
town,
together?
I'll put your house back together.
Mhm.
And next time I come in town, we got to finish.
All right.
Okay?
Mhm.
So, you in, Kenzie?
Mhm.
You
I'm
come
in.
back? Okay.
Call me, I'll be here.
Okay. All right, that's it.
We got to make copies for my children, too.
Oh, we'll make copies for everybody.